following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode here of Sports Chatter TV. I'm your host, Evan Bedell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson. And tonight, Steve, we're going to be discussing, all four major professional sports here. Let's get started with a little NFL talk. Obviously, training camp underway, first preseason games here on the brink.
Yep.
And newly minted Viking here, Greg Jennings.
Greg Jennings,
leaves the Green Bay Packers after some Pro Bowl seasons. And he sort of has been making some comments as training camp has been underway here, sort of ripping his former Green Bay Packers team, particularly quarterback Aaron Rodgers of the Packers. And, the Vikings coach, Leslie Frazier, has come out and said, Greg, time to, be quiet. Jennings says, okay, I'm done. No more chatter for me. And then he comes out a day or two ago and says, the Packers brainwashed me, per se. And he says, they made me feel as every other team in the NFC North, like the Vikings, were sort of a tier below the Packers. So he sort of, after his coach, Leslie Frazier here, says, be quiet, he comes out and stirs up the pot again.
Well, he's absolutely stirring the pot, but maybe I'm alone here. I got to jump out and say, I don't think that this is all that bad of a comment. I mean, compared to his previous comment, calling Aaron Rodgers' leadership ability into question, I don't think this is that bad. I mean, being brainwashed to kind of have a superiority complex and think that your team is better and, tiers above your competitors, I think that's not a bad mentality. Like going into a game, you think you deserve this game, you should win this game, you own the division. I don't think it's really a bad thing for team morale.
Yeah, I mean, Jennings, he's ripping the Packers here, where if you look at it realistically, his best seasons are probably behind him when he was with the Packers, because the Vikings, the quarterback caliber from the Vikings to the Packers is such a big difference. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is leaps and bounds above Christian Ponder. We don't even know if Christian Ponder is going to remain the starting quarterback for the Vikings as the season progresses.
They'll finish last.
I mean,
it's inevitable.
In the NFC North, they're probably one of the last place teams, unless Adrian Peterson puts the team on his back, per se, and, breaks the NFL season record here. For Jennings, he got to keep his mouth shut at this point. I mean, you can't be going on and on. You're sort of, especially if they play the Packers twice a year here, that's just, bulletin board material for the Packers to, stick it to their former teammate and their, NFC North rival. If you're Jennings, I think you just got to keep your mouth shut and let your play do the talking.
I mean, he's definitely that guy. He can talk the talk and walk the walk, but, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think his best years are behind him. So all of his chirping right now is just going to fall on deaf ears because the Packers are going to be way ahead of the Vikings in the conference. So, I mean, he's got to put his nose to the grind and really focus on football, but I don't think we're done hearing from Jennings quite yet.
Yeah, and, moving on to another wide receiver that is on a new team, Wes Welker, former Patriot, now in the Denver Broncos here, comes out and says about Patriots head coach Bill Belichick that he chided him in front of other players, sort of embarrassed him, rode him, particularly this last season, he said, rode him extra hard in front of the team, sort of gone in his case. I don't think he meant it to come off sort of disrespectful to Belichick. I think they sort of respect each other, but I think, last season it kind of showed that their relationship was, deteriorating there. I think Welker, just has, like I said, the most utmost respect for Belichick, but I think Belichick's not going to take too kindly to those words, although I think he does this, gets on every player's case. I think it's not just particular to Welker. I think he does it to all his, players.
Oh, yeah, he's not singling Wes Welker out here. And does Bill lose any sleep over this? Absolutely not. But I think it's just kind of strange that, Welker's coming out of the woodworks and saying something now. I mean, kind of out of nowhere. I get that, at this point in his career with Denver, he's kind of more open to talk to the media and such, but it just seemed like a strange time to kind of come out with these comments. But, I mean, it's no question that Bill is a tough coach to play for. I mean, everyone says that, and, he holds his players to a higher standard, especially when talking to the media, and they scrutinize everything that they do. I mean, you never hear about the Patriots in the media making some stupid comment and embarrassing the team. So I think, overall it works for them. But, I mean, was Wes kind of, was he getting chided a little bit more? Maybe. But, I mean, after that glorious foot comment referring to Rex,
Yep.
I mean, which he got benched for and later apologized for. I think Bill was just trying to, kind of steer him in the right direction there.
Do you think, Welker's comments will lower his, image in Patriots fans' eyes? I think, although he left the team, I think the Patriots fans still had, a good image of Welker and, looked at him positively. Do you think this will affect his image and sort of make him the bad guy?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I mean, I have a little bit of a skewed perception of him just because I feel like he kind of jumped ship for more money. Obviously, with disputes with, Bob Kraft and Belichick as far as his contract. And, Manning, and he was kind of giving him the college recruitment, as Welker said. But as far as his reputation in Foxborough, I don't think it really changes that much. I still respect him. I mean, just look at his numbers and what he did for the team.
Yeah, I mean, when the Broncos go to Foxborough this season, that's definitely going to be one of, if not the biggest game for the Patriots, just because
I can't
Manning versus Brady, and then Welker coming back, and the Broncos are a good team. I mean, with those players, and without them, they were still a good team. But I'm looking forward to that. I think the Patriots, like we talked before, that the Patriots are definitely going to be affected by Walker, not being on the team.
His absence.
I mean, Brady really doesn't have anyone to throw to. Reports coming out of training camp so far, Brady's looked good, but I mean, there hasn't been that many offensive weapons around them.
Right.
I mean, there's no Welker, Gronkowski, Hernandez.
Right.
Probably the three biggest targets from last season, all not in training camp. If you're Brady, you're good friends with Welker. I'm just curious, like, what he thinks about these comments, because Belichick and Brady have such a great relationship.
Right.
And then moving on to another AFC East team here. Buffalo Bills, their offensive coordinator comes out and says, we're going to give the ball to star running back C.J. Spiller until he throws up. We're going to hand it to him until he can't run no more. Great strategy by the Bills, I got to say. I mean, there have been, cellar dwellers for the past, numerous seasons, and Spiller's the first star player to, come out of that, team for as long as I can remember.
Oh.
I mean, he's split time with Fred Jackson last season. Now it's, Spiller's team. He's a great fantasy player if you're looking to pick him up. I mean, if you're into fantasy, I think that's a great strategy by the Bills. You gotta give it to your star player and ride him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like you said, this is the guy that the team is kind of revolving around right now. And just look at the audacity of the Bills to just come right out and say what their offensive strategy is going to be. Oh yeah, we're going to hand it off all the time. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he's a great player, and it'll be interesting to see how they perform because, as you mentioned, they've been in the Patriots' shadow for years now.
Yeah, I mean, their team, I think they're going to do decently well. They got E.J. Manuel as their, the rookie quarterback.
I'm interested to see how Manuel's going to play.
I think Manuel's another dual threat quarterback. I think they should be a fun team to watch. But, I think we can say that Spiller is sort of, although he's been in the league for 3 to 4 years, he's still, new. He hasn't been the featured running back. He's been splitting time with the grizzled vet there, Fred Jackson, for the past couple seasons. And Spiller, he's not really a, inside the tackles runner. He's more, shifty, a la maybe a Chris Johnson, same type of speed. For the Bills, like we said, Spiller, you got to ride him till the wheels fall off and until he gets injured. And if something happens to them, I think the Bills' season, goes down the drain pretty quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, he's more of a juke-style player, but he knows how to find those holes. And the Bills have a great D-line. If they can make those holes for him, I think he's really going to be a threat. I mean, yeah, Spiller, he had to split the time with the grizzled vet, obviously, but he's still a young player and he's still flourishing. So it'll be great to see how his career develops.
Yeah, I mean, Spiller, Showtime, right? I mean,
I'm Showtime.
One of those players that just plays better when the lights come on.
Oh, absolutely.
Lives for those Friday nights.
And that's the guy that the Bills really need right now.
Yeah. So we'll look for that going forward. And then another AFC East team, making news. The Jets, they're always in the headlines. Starter, I guess we could call him, Mark Sanchez. We don't really know what he is right now. Jets still haven't picked. It's between Sanchez, Geno Smith. Probably, I think Smith should get the nod. You got to start him. You drafted him. But Sanchez comes out and says, I deserve to start, week 1. I deserve to start the first preseason game because, all the time he's put in, so on and so forth. What are your thoughts on Sanchez there?
I think literally the only reason why Sanchez will get the start is seniority. I mean, they've said in training camp, neither player has really performed that well. They've kind of been indistinguishable pretty much. Sanchez obviously throwing more interceptions, and Geno himself, they've said he's dipped quite significantly. I think this really just reflects on Gino, though. I mean, how poor has Gino been playing in training camp that Rex feels more confident with Sanchez right now? But with that being said, Sanchez himself, I think the new game plan is that he's going to be game to game. He said himself, I need to continue to play well in order to stay on the field. So, I mean, I don't have much confidence in the guy. I don't think the Jets franchise does either.
I mean,
but I think his first interception, his first mishap, and it's going to be Gino's time to shine.
I mean, reports coming out, during their 11-on-11 practices, Sanchez was getting booed by the fans.
Yeah.
Then Rex Ryan comes out and says, don't boo Sanchez. I mean, I think Rex is sort of in a catch-22 here. One, he starts Sanchez just because, he's been on the team for a couple of seasons. He knows the playbook, seniority, like you stated. And then you start him, but, none of the fans there want to see him in a uniform.
Oh, no, they're sick
or
of
even
him.
Start the season as a starting quarterback. And then if he gets off to a bad start, you got to pull him. But then again, if you start, Geno Smith, their rookie, you don't want to throw him out there to the Wolves and just ruin his career and just get his confidence down, and then he becomes nothing special. He's just another bust of a draft pick. So I think Rex, I think like you said, he has to start Sanchez, or he should, just because seniority. I mean, I don't think Sanchez is the worst quarterback in the league, but he's definitely in the top 3 for worst quarterbacks in the league.
I'd say top 2 personally.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. He's a game manager. Short dump offs. Short quick passes. You're not trying to rely on to chuck the ball 30 times a game. Make these downfield throws. I think if he can manage, I think if he has a good team around him, like we saw his first couple seasons when they went to the AFC championship, they had a great defense. If you build a team around him, he can manage a game and not make that many mistakes. But I mean, you definitely don't want to. Your team's future isn't looking too bright if Mark Sanchez is your starting quarterback going into Week 1 of the 2013 season.
Absolutely not. I'd be really worried if I was a Jets fan right now. I mean, Sanchez has the confidence. He said himself in a press conference, talking about playoffs already. He was talking about the first round of the playoffs and who they would potentially see. So, he already sees them going deep. Does anyone else? Absolutely not. But, I mean, like you said, I think they just need to change their offense around a little bit and really cater to his skills more. He needs a lot more of those short passes. He needs screens for the reason, I mean, you don't want to put Geno out there and have him throw the ball 60 yards, but also have him be gun-shy and getting destroyed by, linebackers and stuff. So I think ultimately you got to give it to Sanchez and see if he's still got what it takes.
Yeah, and, sort of an interesting aspect to the Sanchez story was that, the butt fumble last season when, it's been on the
He'll never live that down.
Yeah, he'll never live that down. Runs into his guard's butt. The guard in that play, whose rear end he ran into, was Brandon Moore, who wasn't on the Jets, and he had 2 days ago had just signed a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys, and then at the last second he decides, I don't want to have to leave my family, and retires. So I mean, you kind of feel bad for that Moore because he was going from one dysfunctional team, the Jets, sort of another dysfunctional team, the Cowboys. But I just thought that was sort of an interesting aspect, in regards to Sanchez, the guy whose rear end he, is infamous now for, he fumbled off of, retires from the game. So that was just another interesting aspect. But, moving on here to a little college football talk, probably the biggest story this week, Johnny Manziel, former Heisman winner last season, star quarterback for Texas A&M. They have big aspirations this season. Gets in an autograph controversy for supposedly signing some pitchers with this autograph for $7,500.
Yep.
That's against NCAA rules. And these NCAA rules are just absurd because of how much money Johnny Manziel has made the NCAA and Texas A&M, probably millions upon millions of dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
And he can't even sign his own picture of him in a game for $7,500.
Yeah, I mean, do I think things need to be changed? Absolutely. I mean, players don't get enough compensation for what they do. I mean, just look at, primetime television, the big games that they put on, the revenue just from the fans alone. I mean, things need to change, but also, what is Johnny Manziel thinking here? Mm-hmm. Realistically, the kid is ruining his future in the NFL right now because executives are seeing all these things as red flags. I mean, just look at his little bit of fame that he has right now and what he's done with it. I mean, after getting ejected from the Manning camp, pictures surfacing of him doing drugs at rival frats, and, now this. It's just the kid is ruining his career, and he really needs to wake up before it's too late.
This is just red flags galore for NFL teams. I mean, he wasn't going to be the #1 quarterback drafted in this upcoming season. You know, Teddy Bridgewater from Louisville was expected, but he was expected
he'll
to
absolutely
go
be first
round. But I mean, his draft stock is just, you know, plummeting at a rapid pace because one story after another is coming out. But, you know, an ESPN analyst for basketball, Jay Bayless, comes out when this Manziel story comes out and starts posting these things on Twitter, on his Twitter saying, look, if you go on the NCAA.com store, if you type in Johnny Manziel, you can buy his jersey for $200. If you type in South Carolina defensive end Jadeveon Clowney, you can buy his jersey. I mean, there's a picture of Reggie Bush from 2006 championship game autographed by him that you could buy for $150, $200. So, I mean, it's sort of hypocritical. You know, the NCAA is saying, you know, Johnny Manziel, it's against the rules for you to sign a picture of you, but we're selling a picture of Reggie Bush, who they levied all these penalties against from his time. And, you know, we're selling that for, you know, $150, $200. I mean, it's just, you can't say one thing and turn around and do another. And, I mean, the NCAA has come out and taken off, you know, the search section of their NCAA store and, you know, taken off all those images, you know, all that memorabilia. But still, I mean,
once it's on the internet, it's on that forever.
I mean, it's just sort of, they come out and have all these ridiculous penalties and rules and regulations against these players, yet they're, you know, profiting off these players and even selling it on their store website.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it's extremely hypocritical. I personally think, you know, this system itself is a little bit corrupt just based on what they do to the players. And, you know, they kind of turn a blind eye to the fact that schools like LSU and Alabama academically are kind of, you know, falling down as, like, reputation-wise just because players don't have to try that hard or get that great of grades and they can still play football. But, I mean, the whole thing with Johnny and the signed autographs, you know, I feel like they've been doing this for years. I mean, go back to USC with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. They were still signing autographs and, you know, they were kind of just looking the other way on it. It didn't really surface until both of them win the NFL, obviously. But, I mean, it's still hypocritical nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, you had, and then like a couple of years ago, you had Ohio State with quarterback Terrell Pryor, you know, sold his, one of his rings, you know, in you know, sort of an auction store. Just like these rules, you know, all these players getting in trouble for not really, you know, doing anything against the law, the law per se. They're not, you know, hurting anyone. They're sort of just making money off themselves.
Yeah.
You know, they're not,
they call themselves
which the colleges and universities are doing them. You know, they're making money off these athletes. So, I mean, it's just sort of you know, you can talk in circles about this subject.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of get aggravated about it just, you know, because we're around these athletes' age, and I don't think we'd like someone making money off us if we can't, you know.
No, of course not. We don't get any royalties or anything off of it.
So it's sort of, you know, unfair for these athletes. But, you know, moving on to a little Major League Baseball talk, another big story this week was, you know, Alex Rodriguez suspended 211 games, formally appeals the suspension. You know, he's still playing right now. You know, the list of other players came out there, you know, accepting their suspensions. But A-Rod, 211 games, the biggest suspension in league, you know, history.
By far, yeah.
Yet he's still playing. So, I mean, we'll just see how this A-Rod story unfolds, I guess.
It doesn't make any sense to me, the fact that he's still playing. You know, he came back. He went 1 for 5 the other night. Played terrible. You know, Yankees don't want him back. Fans don't want him back. But he's still appealing to try and keep playing. When everyone else who's connected to this scandal has just outright accepted the suspension, just figured, you know what, I'll just do it, and then I can continue to play. But here's A-Rod making a big stink about it and, you know, claiming his innocence when they have volumes of stuff against them.
Yeah, and, you know, a report comes out here from, like, CBS Sports, and they say that, you know, they had 30 full-time people investigating, you know, the biogenesis clinic, and they were doing it through, like, technology, through, like, the people's employees there, Facebook, through text, emails. So obviously these guys weren't too, you know, secretive or protective of, you know, their transactions or so on, you know. I mean, MLB was definitely investigating this hard. I think this is Bug Selig's, you know, crowning, just was sort of his, you know, crowning achievement. He was trying to get Alex Rodriguez suspended for life here. You know, that would have been sort of the feather in his cap if he could have done that. But I just think, you know, it would have been tough. I mean, Aaron's already been suspended, but I think Bug Selig was trying to make definitely an example of Alex Rodriguez here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, A-Rod's been kind of flaunting his stuff for years now, and, how long has this really been going on? Who really knows? But I totally agree with you that I think he really wants to get him out of the league.
Yeah, and another player who tested positive for PEDs, one of our favorites, David Ortiz here, Red Sox slugger. He tested positive in, for PEDs in 2003-2004 season, and he comes out and says, a couple days ago that he still doesn't know how he tested positive. No one's ever told him what he tested positive for. I mean, I don't know how Ortiz doesn't know what he tested positive for.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was for something. So it's kind of, I don't know if he's trying to make the fans and the media seem like they're not as smart as him. But, I mean, he comes out and says, I don't know what I tested positive for. It's just sort of ridiculous.
What I don't understand is what is his rationale behind this? Everyone's pretty much forgotten about this, and now he comes back out and kind of reminds everyone, oh, by the way, I was kind of connected to this a little bit. But I just don't understand him coming out and saying that. I mean, obviously he knows what he tested positive for. Everyone knows, his agent knows and everything. So you can't really hide that.
I mean, you got to, if you're him, I'd let sleeping dogs lie.
That's
I mean,
what
I
I'm
think
saying.
it's past, the public really doesn't
Everyone's
look.
moved
I don't
on.
think our first thought when you look at David Ortiz is that's, PEDs 2003. I remember that. I mean, he definitely gave his apology and whatnot. But I mean, you don't want to rehash. That's not something you want to, rehash and bring back up and remind the public. Oh yeah, that he did steroids. I mean, that's not. I don't know why he did it like you said.
It's ludicrous. I don't know if he was trying to get the spotlight on him with the whole phone fiasco, which he's, there's a suspension out there possibly against him, or fine at least, a major fine. But overall, I don't see his rationale here.
And another player here from the Washington Nationals, not linked to PEDs, but, one of the rising superstars in the league.
I'm a big fan of this guy.
Yes, and me as well. Bryce Harper, Nationals. I love the way he plays. He's got the style. I
remember seeing him on YouTube hitting balls at Tropicana Field,
he's got
500 feet.
He's got the swagger. I mean,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
20 years old. A couple games ago, gets hit by a pitch in the thigh, 94 miles per hour. And, doesn't really charge him out, just walks up first baseline there, yapping at the pitcher after he hit a bomb, the at-bat before, and, sort of, I guess he sort of, looked at it, trotted, sort of, showboated. Harper gets drilled by a pitch, yet there's no Nationals, retaliation in the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the home plate umpire jumped right out to make sure the chirping stayed just at that. But, I mean, looking at the play, Harper's solo shot, it was pretty obvious he was taking a slow jog around the bases, kind of flaunting it a little bit. Pretty obvious he watched it sail. And then, Teheran nails Harper broadside right in the hammy. So it was pretty obvious what he was doing. He's letting him know, you're not above me, kid. But, overall, I don't think the Braves really even needed to do that. They're, leaders in the NL East. The Nats are 14 and a half games back. I mean, what are they going to say?
I mean, the only thing I can think of that they didn't retaliate was maybe because they think they still have a chance, to get back in the playoff hunt, so they don't want to lose anyone.
They're so far behind.
But they're so far behind. You got to protect your superstar.
That's what I'm saying.
You got to, maybe, throw behind, do something, just to show, we're not a team to be pushed around. Which I think now after this, you're thinking, oh, maybe we can push around the National,
easily aggravated.
Get after Harper, maybe Strasburg. But that's just, I thought was a, interesting aspect from that game there with Harper.
Funny highlight.
So, moving on to NBA, not really much going on, There's always LeBron James talk, but, Minnesota T-Wolves, recent draft pick, 14th overall, got traded to them, from UCLA, Shabazz Muhammad, gets kicked out of the NBA rookie transition program for having a girl in his room. And the NBA, this program is to help, rookies get acclimated in the league, they bring in guest speakers, how to do, handle your finances, live an NBA lifestyle, properly. And, an hour or two after they lay out the rules, so these rookies, don't bring, one of the rules, don't have a female in your room. Muhammad gets caught with one in his room. You don't know if it was, his girlfriend,
right.
A family member. They didn't specify, what the relationship was to Muhammad. Yet he gets booted. So, I mean, he still has to go back next year and complete this program. Like, it's not like you get kicked out and you're like, oh, well, you don't have to ever do that again. You still got to go back and complete it. He was definitely sort of a focal point for the Timberwolves, I hear. I think moving forward, he's, a pretty good player. But, I mean, other players have been kicked out in the past. 2008, you had Mario Chalmers of the Heat and Darrell Arthur got kicked out of the program because they had marijuana and females in their room. Sort of, I don't know if it's ridiculous that you can't have a female in your room. I mean, he's a professional athlete, but rules are rules. It's sort of like, you go to Rome, you do as the Romans do. You got to abide by the rules, and Muhammad clearly broke them.
I mean, like you said, rules are rules. I think it's a little ridiculous. I mean, he's a young kid, a flourishing player, obviously excited to be a part of the program and, be a professional athlete. Obviously, he's going to go out and kind of flaunt it a little bit, and it's obviously going to get some female attention. But it was still a bonehead move to bring her back to his room, obviously.
But that's the thing about this, not to cut you off, but that's this female. They don't know,
That's
like,
true.
it could be his mother.
What if it's his cousin?
Which, I mean,
I don't know.
like, it's sort of ridiculous. It's if you get kicked out because your mom's in your room and, you're having dinner with her, or you're just, like, hanging out.
I'd like to think it wasn't a relative.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it probably wasn't a relative, but, I mean, you never know. But if it was his mother, that's sort of even more absurd that he gets kicked out for that. But if it was, his girlfriend or, I don't know, another female that he had just met, stings for Muhammad and for the T-Wolves. T-Wolves can't catch a break. They've been, every time you think they're going up, something like a story like this comes out.
1 step forward, 16 backwards.
Yeah, so the T-Wolves not looking like a promising start for them that they were hoping for. And then LeBron James, I know he's always in the headlines here.
Yeah,
Report comes out that he's mulling becoming the next Players Union president. And then, another report comes out that he's not going to take it. But, I mean, if LeBron was the next, union rep for the players here, the president, I think it would be the most, prolific player since Patrick Ewing. I mean, the previous one was Derek Fisher, and now it's like, I want to say Grant Hill. If LeBron was the president, I think more decisions could be swayed in the player's way. But, I mean, if it was him, I don't think he should take it just because more responsibility and more pressure on, the stockpile of stuff he already has to do and accomplish.
Right. I mean, he's got so much stuff going on right now for him. I think it'd be way too difficult to try and juggle being a player and, headwaying this. But, it's obviously he cares for the union and he cares for what's best for the NBA as a business and for the players overall. I think he could be a good fit there, honestly, but I think it's going to have to wait till later in his career. I think he's really thinking about a legacy aspect of it. He's trying to, just do whatever he can, be a part of basketball.
Yeah, I think he's trying to add to his resume. I think we'll definitely know what the outcome of the story is because he always makes the headlines. But, right before we wrap up here, moving on to a little NHL talk, Nick Lidstrom, former great defenseman, all-star, Hall of Fame defenseman for the Red Wings, to have his number retired by the Detroit there. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's only fitting. I mean, several-time Norris winner. He's a great player. I think it's going to be great to see number 5 up in the rafters. I mean, just think about it. When you think of the great players who have come from the Red Wings organization, you think of, Steve Yzerman, Nick Lidstrom, and,
Brendan Shanahan.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were growing up, the 90s, that was the team to follow. Fedorov. I mean, all these,
that's a name drop.
Chris Osgood,
Osgood.
Chris Chelios. You can just rattle off the names of Kirk Maltby, all these guys. You can just rattle off the names of players that we followed growing up, and even we're fans of the Bruins, but the Red Wings probably one of my second favorite
Yzerman
team.
I was a huge fan of Yzerman.
Yeah, Stevie Y. I mean, we still remember him, but Lidstrom, top 5 defenseman, I think, of all time. I think you could say
easily.
I mean, him and Chelios played together, and they might be in the top 5 together.
Oh, that's
Chris
Chelios
is probably
absolutely
another top 5 defenseman. And another story here. Current Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks forward Andrew Shaw, poor man's version of Brad Marchand, auctioning off his stitches from the playoffs for charity. I think great move by him. I mean, definitely the best thing you can do with your stitches, auction them off for charity. I'm sure someone will bid on them. People always bid on crazy stuff like that.
I'm not sure who would personally want these, in their man cave or whatever, but I think it's still, good looks on them for having it go to charity and really doing the right thing with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shaw, it definitely adds to his reputation.
I mean, as a Bruins fan, it's heartbreaking to say it, but I respect his character here.
Yeah.
I don't want to
He's a young
respect
kid.
the guy,
He's only
but
20 years old per se.
But I mean, netting a few goals against the Bees, it was brutal.
So
but you got to respect.
we'll definitely have to report on how much those stitches go for on
keep
eBay
it
or whatever he's
updated.
auctioning for. But that's it for another episode here of Sports Shatter TV. Again, I'm your host, Evan Bedell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson. And don't forget to tune in next week for another great episode here of Sports Shatter TV.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.